Hey, teeth lovers, welcome to today's show where it might be a little bit shorter than normal. I mean, they're not long in general, my episodes, but I'm talking about all things core, and I want to just give you kind of the nuts and bolts and not like any fluff, right? Which I don't think I normally do, but regardless, I am constantly talking about core on every single one of my calls with hygienists. And not once have I heard, oh, my core is really strong, right? I mean, we all have to work on our core. We're never going to get to that point where like, oh, our core is so super strong, like we have to stop working it, right? Like that just doesn't happen. It's just the most important part of our body. It's the foundation for everything we do. And with that said, when I am chatting to people, I'm constantly hearing, I need to strengthen my core, or even if you've had children, like my core's gotten really, really weak. I tend to slouch as the day progresses. I can't sit up straight for very long. And this is why I want to talk about this episode, right? So I'm going to dive into this and I'm going to give you my top 3 movements that hygienists should do in order to build a strong, solid core for their career. So grab a pen and paper if you'd like, and let's get started.
Hey there! Welcome to the Lift for Longevity podcast, where our goal is to build our strongest, healthiest body. We all deserve to feel our best, but since we only get one body, we have to make sure to protect it by moving safely and with purpose to prevent pain, injury, and surgery. I'm your host, Brianne Novaes, and I'm a fit pro turned business owner and also a girl mom. I'm obsessed with educating and empowering dental pros on how to take care of their body by training efficiently and building the right muscles to prolong their career. I know you're tired of spending time working out but still dealing with annoying aches and pains, getting rid of your pain temporarily only to have it come right back just a few hours later, or feeling like you never have any energy. You wish there was a long-term solution to get rid of your pain for good. Well, I'm here to give you real-life, actionable steps that you can take today to get rid of your pain, say goodbye to quick fixes, and have energy to live a life that you love. So if you're ready to get stronger, enjoy your life outside the operatory, and have longevity in your career, grab yourself a high-protein snack and let's get to it.
Okay, so I'm so excited to talk about core because it's kind of become an obsession of mine. And maybe you feel like you train core by doing like crunches or planks, or like I have a client who she's like, I used to go to the gym and I'd skip core and say, I'll do it later at home. And then she would never do it. And I completely can relate to this because that was me back in the day. I thought core was boring. I never wanted to do it. And I lifted heavy. I was always in the barbell. So I was like, oh, I'm working my core, right? And wow, 11 years later, this is totally not my motto. Like I have totally transitioned to like core is like the center of everything we do, right? So like why wouldn't that be the center of our training? But I've actually come to really enjoy training my core because yes, it's challenging, and I have clients who can attest to this too, because it's like you can feel how functional you're becoming, right? Like you're able to lift heavier, or you feel stronger, or you can sit up for straighter longer, right? But it's all very functional in everything we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So side note, I do have a free guide on how to build a strong core, and I'll link that at the end in the show notes. But first, we're going to get started with talking about what core is not, right? And so a lot of times, again, people think crunches are core. These work our 6-pack abs. And, when you're a hygienist, you're in flexion all day. You have rounded shoulders and forward head. Like we don't need to do more flexion. In addition to that, a lot of hygienists that I see have excessive arch in their low back, and this is putting a ton of extension, on their spine, and we don't need to exacerbate that, right? So our core basically is meant to resist movement. And if we're doing things like crunches or even Russian twists, right? It's like that excessive repeating patterns, flexion and rotation essentially. And this actually increases your chance of injury. So we definitely want to avoid movements like this. Okay, so how do we make sure that we are building a core that resists movement of our spine? So essentially, we use what we call anti-movements, right? They're going to fall into 3 categories. The first category is going to be known as anti-extension, right? As I mentioned earlier, you don't want to have that excessive extension of your low back because it's just putting pressure on your low back, right? Your core is not engaged. It's just doing so much more harm than good. It's not doing any good, to be honest. So we want to definitely protect our spine. We have to make sure we're keeping our hips up and that back flat. And so basically, my favorite movements of this are going to be the dead bug. And you've probably done that before. But yes, like I said, you definitely want to make sure and keep that pelvis neutral so that your back is on the floor. And I see people tend to rush these exercises. Like the slower, the better when you're doing any core movements, right? The other one, which is a little bit more challenging, is going to be the body saw. I love the body saw. I think it's amazing. And there's ways to modify it and there's ways to progress it. So essentially, if you're not able to do a body saw yet, you can start with a plank and kind of progress from there. But body saws are a really great way to train that anti-extension as well. Okay, so the second type of anti-movements is going to be anti-rotation. And I love this because I know we're not supposed to rotate in the op, but guess what? It happens. We're humans and we move all the time. And so essentially, the fact that we are twisting and rotating, we have to make sure that we are building a body that can sustain those movements, right? So basically, this is going to allow our hips and spine to resist rotation, right? So the best exercises, for examples I can use of this are going to be bird dog, which I do love, and I'm sure most people are aware of what a bird dog is. However, I do this in my movement screen to test that anti-rotation, right, capabilities, and 100% of the time people do this wrong. People are so focused on raising their arms and legs, or their core's just not engaged at all. They're rushing it. So I always am coaching my new clients in this screen when they're doing the bird dog. Like, I don't really care how high your arm and legs go, because if you're focused on that, you're not worried about what your core and your hips and your spine are doing, right? So essentially, you do want to go as slow as possible with this. And the goal is to tuck the hips under so the pelvis is neutral, right? That back should be flat. Like I show them, my back should be able to hold like a coffee cup, for example, right? That entire time without those hips rotating. So if you're not able to do this, I would just start on all fours, tuck the tailbone under, make sure that back is flat. So the other thing I see is people start off great, and then when they go to pick their opposite arm and leg up, their hips sag and drop, and there's that arch in their low back, and it kind of gives out. Again, their core is totally disengaged, and it defeats the whole purpose. Like the bird dog is a core exercise, so we need to make sure that the entire time that we're doing every single repetition, the core is engaged by keeping the hips up and the back flat. Okay, and then as far as the Palloff press, I do this with bands. You can do cables, but this is probably like my all-time favorite exercise. And there's ways to make it more challenging. I mean, it's challenging in itself, but there's so many different variations that I add. I have them in my current program. I'm working on a new program, and I've got variations of it. And it's just like the most amazing exercise in the whole world. So if you haven't tried it yet, give it a try. Okay, and the third type of anti-movements is going to be anti-lateral flexion. And so I know, again, like I said earlier, you're not supposed to twist and rotate in the op, but like life happens, right? And I know all the time I hear people who you're kind of like your torso's lean into one side, your elbows up, you're like nose deep in someone's mouth, because you just kind of have to do that sometimes, is what my clients tell me. They have to do that with their patients. So basically, again, we need to train our body in that manner so that it has that strength and that stability to be able to perform that without getting injured. So my top two exercises with the anti-lateral flexion are going to be a suitcase carry and a side plank. So I'm not really going to dive into the side plank because I'm sure everybody knows what that is. But I do have suitcase carry in my program. It's a staple for me and my clients for so many years. And so basically you have a kettlebell in one side, and typically you want to go a little bit heavy, but long story short, you're walking very slow and controlled. Your shoulders are pulled back, right? And your hips are tucked. So like everything is nice and neutral. And ideally, you want to go a little bit heavy with this weight. However, when you're doing this, it tends to hit the upper traps, which in hygienists is not a very fun muscle, right? It's already kind of aggravated. So there's different things we can do to modify this to make this more challenging. You can add a band to the handle on the kettlebell to make that, whatever offset side you're working more challenging, because essentially the weight is on one side, but you're actually working the opposing side. So it's just super cool. Like you'll feel it the whole time if you're doing it right anyways. Again, so if you haven't tried those type of movements, I would definitely recommend those. Okay, so by utilizing these three different types of movements, we're training our core in different planes, which I always talk about how important that is, because our core is 360 degrees, but also we need to be able to train functionally and move with purpose and intention, right? So when we're doing core, like it's a big part of our program, but we can't just train core and like call it a day, right? Like we have to make sure that we have a well-balanced program in order to build a well-balanced body. So that's really all I have for you today. I will again link that free guide on how to build a strong, solid core. So grab your copy. and give a few of them a try. Let me know what your favorite is. I would love to hear from you. Shoot me a DM, and I will catch you next week.
Thank you so much for listening in today. I hope you got a takeaway from this episode. And if you did, would you be so kind to share it with another dental pro you think would benefit from it? I know you love learning, and chances are that they do too. Also, I would love to connect with you on Instagram, so go ahead and head over to the Lift for Longevity podcast page or follow me at Built by Brianne. If you shoot me a message saying hello, I will personally respond because I love chatting with dental pros. Before you go, though, I want to let you know that I appreciate you and what you do, and I hope to chat soon. Until next time, stay strong.